friends, and welcome to episode 33 of the Creative Cast. As usual, I am so glad that you are joining me again this week. First, needed to apologize for the podcast getting out a little bit later than normal. As things happen, I uploaded the wrong file. Had to take it down, re-put it back up. Technology, it's great. And sometimes it's the fault of the podcast host. So thank you for hanging in with me. And thank you to those of you that let me know, hey, I don't think this is the right file. Accidents happen, even to podcast producers. For the majority of podcasters, we all have one similar goal. And that goal is to put out high-value content on a consistent basis. At least that should be your main goal for your podcast. That's how you build your audience and all those things. Now, I know that you're always looking for ways to grow your brand, showcase your expertise, as well as build your audience. And there are many ways, effective ways, on how to do this, which I talk about in great length on episode 10 of the Creative Cast. So make sure that you go back and listen to that, and I'll make sure to put that link in the show notes for you. Now, of course, for this episode's purposes, so some of them include posting your episodes as blog posts on your websites. Highly encourage that. You could also launch a video podcast or YouTube channel. Also encourage that. Or you could leverage Pinterest to help promote your show. Now, today we're going to be talking about one other way to do that, and that is by turning your podcast content into a book. Now, many podcast hosts have had great success from branching out as an author and sharing their area of expertise in a much different way. So first off, let's talk about the most important factor, or at least what I think the most important factor is. By taking your podcast content and turning it into a book, you're going to strengthen your reputation as a thought leader and expert in your niche. One of the most compelling reasons for writing a book is that it is an amazing credibility booster. Because having a book with your name and your face on the cover is a great way to skyrocket you to that expert status. Because books are viewed as one of the most credible sources of information, right? We all remember our term papers where you had to have 6 sources and 3 of them had to be a book. So by sharing your podcast content in a more text-based format, you will be able to further establish yourself as an expert on your topic. And as a result, people will see you, and by extension, your podcast, as a reliable and credible source of information, further enhancing your quote-unquote street cred and brand reputation. In addition to this, by turning your podcast into a book, you're going to be putting out more content across another medium, which, as I said, all serves to strengthen your cred and will be essential to helping your podcast rise to the top of your chosen niche. Another reason, to quote the great John Bon Jovi, we're halfway there. No, I'm not going to sing for y'all today. But one of the best reasons for turning your podcast into a book is the simple fact that as a podcaster, you'll already have a head start. So if you're asking me why, well, you already have so much content to start with. If you have over, let's say, 25 to 30 episodes, that's a lot of content. Now, from the writers that I've talked to, listening to the great Ali Worthington talk about the book writing process, as well as Lisa Whittle, and many other authors and different trainings that I've taken to write a book of my own, one of the things I've noticed is that the most daunting challenge of writing a book is the sheer amount of content that you need to produce, usually from scratch. Now, as a podcaster, you already have lots of amazing high-value content to start with, especially if you've been faithfully transcribing your podcasts. And just one of the many reasons why I always say you should be transcribing them, hint, hint, If you're not, make sure to go ahead and do that. Sign up with my friends over at podscribe.ai. I've talked about them before in the podcast. They are my absolute favorite for transcription. I'll put the link in the show notes for you, but there's also lots of other options like Otter and several different apps that are out there that will help you do that as well. Now, you're still going to have to put some time and effort and some additional writing because you are writing a book after all, but it's going to be considerably less than if you were starting it completely from scratch. And as an added bonus to this, since you've already done the research for your episodes, you already have that part done. It's ready and waiting for you, or as you start your book writing project. Now, since we're talking about all that research and the content that you've created, by taking that information, by taking that content, repurposing it into a book, it gives you that opportunity to do something else that I talk about quite often here on the Creative Cast, repurposing that content. Now, since we're talking about all that research and content that you've already created, by turning it into a book, it gives you an opportunity to repurpose that content. And while any research that you do for your show is never really wasted because it allows for a much better show, whether that research goes into the final product of your podcast episode or not, in this case, with this book writing project, that research phase is mostly done for you. Now, you may have to do some additional research depending on what content you put in there, what your outline looks like, things like that. But the majority of it is done for you. And because of the research that you've done, the examining of your analytics that you do on a regular basis, all those best practices into putting out great podcast content, you already have a good idea of the type of content your audience wants. You know the direction you need to head into as you prepare to write the book, and you can leverage this information to your advantage by using it to create a book that your audience is going to be all too eager to get their hands on. In one of the masterminds that I'm in, I see so many posts from would-be authors and writers is that fear, that imposter syndrome, that they're simply not going to be able to sell one copy of their book that maybe their friends and family don't buy. And I've seen so many amazing and talented writers halt the project before it ever has a chance to see the light of day. I see this with lots of podcasters too. And if that is you, we're just going to take a second here to say this. I want you to go ahead and do it anyway, whether it's writing the book or doing the podcast or going back to school or whatever it is. God has put that idea in your heart for a reason, and you need to do it. Okay, let's get back on track here. As a host of a podcast, you probably already have a loyal base of listeners, and you know that there are people who are interested in your area of expertise and would be eager to purchase your work in print. You've got social, you've got your email list, you've got people that know you through different networks, through different masterminds, through different Facebook groups, things like that, that come to you and say, hey, I have a question about this particular topic. Can you help me out with it? Or can I... Now, the other thing, in all my years of working with podcasters, listening to podcasts, I have found that podcast listeners are some of the most loyal and dedicated fans out there. And this means that you probably already have a huge amount of support for your book. Y'all, I am not saying that you won't have to do any work here, because you will. But the support from your podcast community, whether that's your listeners, other podcasters, whomever it is, it's going to be really beneficial to your book's overall success. But again, head start here, y'all. You already have a list of people who you could ask to be on their podcast to talk about your book. You know people who may know people that can get you on someone's podcast. Your listeners are going to be more than happy to share that information. Social media, just put it out there and it's going to go. because you already have that already there. That head start's it's already working for you. And on top of that, all that support from your audience, your networks, your following can be a great motivational force for spurring you on to complete the writing project. Because we all start projects, right? It's the finishing part that we have a tendency to not always follow through with. And if you put yourself out there and say, I'm going to do this, then you kind of need to do it. It's kind of like with my book writing project. It got a little off track with some of this medical health stuff in 2021, but the book project is back on track and probably will be coming out in 2022, but it will be finished. Now, one of the main goals, as you probably have heard me talk about before, is to get your content in front of as many listeners as possible. Now, we've talked before about that there's many ways that this could be done, whether it's promoting your show on a variety of social media networks, to looking for guest opportunities on other people's podcasts, to creating discoverable content on your website, blog, YouTube channel, Pinterest, tons of ways. However, maybe writing a book could be just the marketing strategy that your podcast needs. Whether that's physical print, a digital book, even an audiobook. Each type has its own unique platforms to reach potential readers and listeners, as the points of sale and the distribution channels are very unique. Because each platform has its own audience, depending on what type of content readers are likely to consume. So by putting out your content in a completely different format, you're going to be reaching a whole new audience, which you can then convert to podcast listeners. About 10 years ago, there was a survey conducted by the New York Times, which revealed that 81% of people want to write a book one day. Now, obviously, I'm one of those people, right? And I bet you there are several of you, many of you that are listening, fall into that same category as well. I mean, how many of us have that dream of one day writing that best-selling book? But so many people seem to think, it's just a pipe dream, or that's just something that I'll do one day when I'm not as busy, or I don't have as many irons in the fire, or my kids grow up, or whatever the case may be. It's something that we add to our bucket list that we'll get around to one day. As you guys know, storytelling is very important to me. It's one of my main motivational forces, my main passion for what I do as a producer, a strategist, a coach. And for many podcasters, this idea of storytelling is the reason they got into podcasting in the first place, because it was an easier way to share their story and their voice with the world. They didn't have to worry about a book getting picked up or published. They could just turn the mic on and share. Now, we all know podcasting is not that easy, but you get what I'm saying. But now, as a podcaster, with all the work that you've put into your show, whether you just got started or you've been doing this for 4 years and have over 200 episodes, you've put in work. And we all know launches take work. It is not easy by any stretch of the imagination. But especially if you've been doing it a little while, you've done the work to build up your community, to create your podcast community. And this dream of writing a book starts looking a little bit more like a reality. And even if becoming a best-selling author was not on your to-do list, as I mentioned earlier, being able to put author behind your name can only serve to cement your voice as one of an authority and experience in your niche. Now, the other great thing about having a book or utilizing your podcast to write your book is it's going to create additional streams of income. Now, creating valuable content means that there's always the potential to turn that content into another stream of revenue. And who doesn't like an additional stream of revenue? And so this is especially true of a book. Because once you've put in the hard work to get your book published, you've covered all the costs you may have incurred through the editing and printing and distribution processes, any sale of your book will see you bringing in additional passive revenue. Depending on, if you decide to go the traditional publishing route or the self-publishing route, it will bring an additional revenue into that. The other thing, it can also open up opportunities for audience exposure and more streams of revenue. That could be anything from a speaking engagement to being asked to deliver a keynote address, teaching a workshop, being a featured guest on maybe a television appearance or something like that. All becomes a greater possibility when you've built up your credibility and authority within your niche just because you put author behind your name. And hopefully it's best-selling author behind your name. Now, as I said, y'all, turning your podcast into a book can open up many new doors and create the potential for many new and exciting opportunities for you, friend. And of course, the thought of writing and editing and publish your book can also be really daunting. And trust me, friend, I am right there with you. But there's some really great benefits to putting your amazing content out there in a brand new format and reaching a whole new audience. But above all, taking up that challenge of writing your book, reaching a wider group of people with your content is also going to gain you more listeners to your podcast. Take a page out of one of my podcast marketing strategies and start putting pen to paper or your fingers on your keyboard. So if you do decide to write a book, I want you to let me know. You can shoot me a DM on Instagram, send me an email at hello@tammymunsoncreative.com. I absolutely want to hear about what you're working on. And this is not an ad, but if you really want to hone your craft as a writer, especially as a Christian writer, then you may want to join Called Creatives. Now, Allie Worthington and Lisa Whittle have created an amazing community for writers and speakers and podcasters and everything in between. They have some amazing trainings, plus their writing mastermind groups are amazing. So, like I said, not an ad, just a really great resource, and I'm also a member there. So y'all, I am so excited about next week's episode because I am having not only three special guests on the show in the same episode. So I am having the amazing ladies from Storytellers Live podcast. Yes, Robin and Lindy and Katie are joining me here on the Creative Cast. Oh, the conversation is just absolutely amazing, and I cannot wait for you to listen. Hint, we laughed a lot. Oh, so good. Can't wait for you guys to listen to it. I need you to do a favor for me. I would really love if you would go over and rate and review the podcast if you haven't done so already. If you could share this episode with 2 friends. Because, as you know, the more you leave reviews and the more we share about the show, the more it helps others find out about the Creative Cast. For a quick link, you can go to tammymunsoncreative.com/Apple Podcasts, and that'll take you directly to the page where you can rate and review right there. I would absolutely love you for that. And also, since it is the Christmas season, and Merry Christmas, everyone, but did you see my gift guide? If you're a podcaster or you have another podcaster in your life or you just want to give ideas of things that you want to maybe your husband, your boyfriend, whatever, I have the gift guide out. To get it, go over to my bio on my Instagram page and click the link and it'll take you directly there. Now, ladies, I believe in each and every one of you. Y'all are my heroes because, as you know, I believe that having inexperience, production fatigue, and intimidating tech shouldn't hold you back from accomplishing your goals. So let's walk through this journey together so that you can spend less time worrying about the details and more time spreading your message, telling your story, sharing your voice, whatever it is. So I hope that you have a great day, and I will talk to you next Monday. Bye, y'all.